Hey everyone, my name is Greg and I'm really excited to be starting on my 4th brew day ever. This is my new hobby that I'm really into. I got into about 2-3 months ago, but every time I do a batch I feel like it's a learning experience, and today I feel pretty organized, and so I wanted to kind of share that with anyone else that might be going through the same hobby and in the same learning curve. So today what I really want to focus on is talking about exactly all the equipment you need for your first beer in a bag brew day session. So to get started, I'm just going to go through the equipment that I've kind of put together here, and I feel like this is all you need to go through the whole day and have a really smooth, successful brew day. So to start, what I consider the first piece of equipment you need is some kind of brewing kettle. This is where you're going to be brewing your beer. What I happen to have selected is a 15-gallon. This is a Spike Brewing stainless steel brewing kettle. I went for one of the optional setups they have, which is where they drill the holes for you. And I have the bowl valve here, which makes it a lot easier to get the beer out when you're done making it. And also the non-adjustable face thermometer, so I kind of have a good idea of what the temperature is while I'm setting my strike water temperature, while I'm trying to get up to a boil, and later on while I'm cooling. And yeah, so you see there's a lot of space. And actually one thing I want to point out is we live in a 1-bedroom apartment in New York. Space is kind of limited, so you'll see obviously I'm doing this on our kitchen stove, and that's kind of a big concern for a lot of people in my situation. What kind of equipment should I get, what will work? And so I feel like this 15-gallon kettle, after doing a lot of measurements, just was the exact maximum. I would say get 15-gallon or smaller for anyone brewing on their stovetop, for space consideration reasons, and also because the stove only has so much power. The thing I like about going with the 15-gallon kettle is it's big enough where it actually will use 2 burners instead of 1. So it actually might work better than if you got a smaller kettle on 1 burner. Kind of like put, never get into a boiling temperature. So okay, we got the kettle. Stainless steel is what I went with. Another stainless steel item is a nice big spoon. This will come in handy along the way, partly because when you're mashing, I use this as my stirring spoon, and any other stirring, stainless steel, it's just better than using another material. So I have that. Another thing you'll see out here is some of the existing stew pots we had in our kitchen for normal cooking. Sometimes if it's taking you a while to get to the temperature you want, I use this handy bowl valve to kind of get the water or the wort out, and I start using the other 2 burners. So you're really using 4 burners on your stove. It's really efficient. So you think you're limited in a 1-bedroom apartment somewhere with a regular stove, you're not allowed to have a propane, but this really helps you get through that. And later on we're going to go through it. It's going to be a lot of fun. Some other equipment, the buckets. I'm not going with carboys because I've read a lot about glass being dangerous, but I've had a lot of fun so far using the food grade 6.5-gallon buckets. I have a couple of these around the apartment, but for today's brew day I'll need 2 buckets. One for the sanitizer, and then 1 to hold the beer. So always at least have 2 buckets, even if you're only going to have 1 batch at a time. And also, for at least one of those buckets, have a lid. I have the nice lid that's meant for the bucket with the hole drilled here for your airlock. I use a 3-piece airlock, but what I've been doing lately is, and I'll show you as we go through this, instead of using all the airlock pieces, I've been converting to just doing a blow-off tube, and I hook up the hose to this, and we'll see that later. We're going to go through the whole process. You have a lot less babysitting of the airlock if you go with this instead, so there's that. Some other stuff, part of the cooling, is I have a garden hose, which I got at Home Depot. It's 2 6-foot lengths of garden hose, and somewhere here I do have an adapter, which I'm going to put on my sink here, which lets the normal New York City kitchen sink hook up to the garden hose nicely. The reason I have that garden hose is because another Ferrari piece of equipment that I went is Jaded Brewing has this King Cobra immersion cooler, which is really awesome. You literally just have to put it in your beer at the end, and the reason why I wanted to show you this right now is because part of that whole taking measurements thing was I had to think, hey, I might fit a big kettle, but will I be able to get my chiller in here and have enough space to get it in the beer later? So that's something you have to consider. And I definitely took a lot of little measurements, and this is exactly pushing it for me. So I knew the kettle was as big as I can go, and the chiller would fit. Another reason I suggest this one is notice how wide it is and low. A lot of these coolers are just really tall, one single coil of copper, and on a 5-gallon batch of beer, which is what I'm going to be making, half the thing will be sitting above the beer not doing anything. So this thing's really awesome. I don't know, it's the only one I've ever owned, but I think it's awesome. Some other stuff you'll need. You notice I have some hoses here. This is a food grade high temperature hose that I got at the local homebrew shop. This is for later when your beer is done. All you do is pop it on the bowl valve here, and you can drain it out into your fermentation bucket. Some of the other stuff I have here, and this is a new accessory for me. I've only used it once. I think it's really good. This is an oxygenation stone. Basically, right before you pitch your yeast, you can pump oxygen, pure oxygen, into your beer. This will get sanitized, and you just put it in there, and you have a nice oxygen source. Now, what is that oxygen source? Look at this. So part of the kit was this little thing at the top. It's basically just a screw-on valve for your oxygen container, and you turn this on, oxygen starts pumping through the stone. This is the 0.5 micron, it's the finer hulled one, which I think is a little better. This thing I got at the hardware store. You can go to Home Depot, Lowe's. It's a disposable, costs like $10, oxygen tank. So this is new. It's good if you want to oxygenate your beer and be a little more effective in providing your yeast some oxygen. Only a few more things here. Star sand. About a ½ ounce will go into 2.5 gallons of water, and that'll be going in one of these buckets later. I should mention this. Nice stainless steel kind of a strainer. This one's really good. You can find this at any food supply place. This is oil clad, but you can just get any brand, but I would get stainless steel. The reason I have this is because when I'm dumping the beer from the kettle into the fermentation bucket, I like to catch some of the debris that's in there, hop residue or whatever else is in there, because some of that stuff I don't want to end up in the beer. Optional, but I really like it. One other thing, and this is what I really like about beer in a bag, is you use a bag, and all your grains are going to go in there. We're going to see that later. But later, when you pull the bag out, I like to put one of these little strainers, more of a coarse hulled strainer, on top of one of my extra kettles. And later we're just going to squeeze the grain on there, and it's going to be a little easier to get some of that liquid back out. Nice measuring cup. This is a 32-ounce measuring cup. I use this both for mashing my grains gradually, and also if you have to take any measurements, and we're going to be doing that later. I recommend having a nice little glass, boiling kettle here. I do this to boil the water for the yeast, 1 cup per packet. Let it get back to room temperature, and then also, steam the lid while you're doing it. Get your yeast rehydrated. That's useful. And then a couple more things. We have hydrometers, which we'll go into more detail later, but a hydrometer is very useful for taking your gravity readings. You need a little test tube kind of thing to take the beer sample for the hydrometer to go into. That's important. And have a little bit more of a 2 to 3 foot lengths of that food grade hose. We're going to use that later for the blow off tube for the beer. Aside from that, the only equipment you need after that is the bags, which we talked about. Beer in a bag. You need your paint straining, finely meshed bag for all your grains to go into. And one of my tactics that I just started doing is, instead of using one big bag, I use 2. And this way it's a lot easier to get the bag out. It fits into this kitchen-sized equipment to strain it. So I find that to be a really nice little cheating tip there. And also some of the smaller bags for hops, which we're going to talk about next. I don't like to throw the hops in there loose, because then it clogs the pot, or there's a lot more residue to filter out. I find these bags are pretty useful.